During a sun-drenched afternoon, the aroma of sizzling burgers filled the backyard as our family gathered for a casual barbecue. I watched as my brother Miles doted on his fiancée, Cora, serving her a plate of food with a besotted grin. Although beautiful and charming on the surface, something about Cora's calculating gaze unsettled me. "So, Lena," Cora said, her perfectly manicured fingers toying with the stem of her wine glass, "Miles mentioned you're a tutor at the community college." I tensed, sensing the subtle condescension in her tone. "Yes, I find it incredibly rewarding to help students unlock their full potential." Cora's scarlet lips curved into a patronizing smile. "How quaint. I can't imagine settling for such a modest career, but I suppose not everyone has ambition." My jaw clenched as Miles shot me an apologetic glance, oblivious to the true extent of Cora's disdain. I forced a polite smile, determined not to cause a scene at our family gathering. Later, as I helped Mom clear the dishes, she leaned in close. "Cora seems a bit intense, doesn't she?" I exhaled slowly, choosing my words carefully. "I'm just worried Miles might be rushing into this. They've only been together for a few months." Mom's brow furrowed with concern. "You don't think she's after our family's money, do you?" Before I could respond, Miles strode into the kitchen, his arm draped possessively around Cora's waist. "There are my two favorite ladies. What are you whispering about?" Cora flashed her dazzling smile, but I noticed the calculation behind her eyes. "Oh, just girl talk." As the evening wound down, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that Cora's true motives extended far beyond love and commitment. Her snide remarks hinted at a deep disdain for anyone or anything she deemed beneath her. And for some reason, I feared my brother had become her latest target. In the weeks following the barbecue, my unease around Cora only intensified. I noticed peculiar charges appearing on the family business accounts. Expensive jewelry, designer clothes, even a deposit for a lavish destination wedding venue. When I questioned Miles about it, he brushed it off, insisting Cora was just getting settled into her new role managing our finances. "She's brilliant with numbers, Lena," he said dreamily. "I've never felt more confident leaving that side of things to someone else." I wanted to believe him, but something didn't add up. How could this near stranger have earned such blind trust so quickly? One evening, I stopped by Miles' apartment unannounced, hoping to catch Cora off guard. She opened the door, her perfectly coiffed hair and immaculate makeup striking for that late hour. "Lena, what a surprise," she purred, not bothering to hide her disdain. "Miles isn't home from the office yet. Actually, I wanted to talk to you." I pushed past her into the living room, unfazed by her narrowed eyes. "I've noticed some irregular expenses on the business accounts you're managing." Cora's expression remained infuriatingly calm. "Oh? Like what?" I listed off the suspicious charges: designer clothes, lavish vacations, even personal care services that seemed wildly excessive. "Care to explain what our family's hard-earned money is being spent on?" For a moment her mask slipped, revealing a flash of anger. But just as quickly, the placid smile returned. "Lena, darling, you worry too much. Can't a woman treat herself occasionally?" She trailed a finger along my arm, her voice taking on a sickly sweet tone. "Why don't you find yourself a nice man and leave the business matters to me?" I jerked away from her touch, repulsed. "I don't trust you, Cora, and I won't stop until I expose whatever game you're playing." Her smile turned frigid. "You'd be wise to mind your own business. Wouldn't want anything unfortunate to happen to your beloved community college, now would you?" The thinly veiled threat hung in the air as I stormed out, more convinced than ever that Cora's intentions were sinister. If Miles refused to see the truth, I'd have to take matters into my own hands, for the sake of our family. After my confrontation with Cora, I knew I needed to dig deeper into her background. Miles was too blinded by love to see the truth, so it was up to me to expose her for who she really was before it was too late. I spent sleepless nights scouring the internet, searching for any clues about Cora's past relationships or financial dealings. What I uncovered was a trail of wealthy men she had dated briefly before unexpectedly cutting ties and moving on to her next target. Posing as a prospective client, I even contacted a few of Cora's former romantic interests. The stories they told painted a disturbing picture, one of manipulation, deceit, and a ruthless pursuit of money and status. "She love-bombed me at first," one man confided over the phone, his voice laced with bitterness. "Showered me with attention, made me feel like the luckiest guy in the world, but as soon as I signed over power of attorney, she drained my accounts and disappeared." Another disclosed how Cora had pressured him into an accelerated wedding timeline, only to call it off at the last minute and walk away with the non-refundable deposits. With each new revelation, my determination to stop Cora grew stronger. She was clearly a master of deception, and Miles was headed down the same tragic path as her previous victims if I didn't intervene. Meanwhile, Cora's schemes showed no signs of slowing down. She insisted on hosting an over-the-top engagement party, under the guise of celebrating their love, but likely as another opportunity to flaunt her illicit wealth. "We simply must have it at the Grand Pavilion Ballroom," she gushed to Miles one evening when I stopped by unannounced. "It's the most exclusive venue in town." Miles beamed, utterly captivated. "Of course, my love, whatever you desire." She caught my skeptical gaze and smirked. "Lena, you're welcome to come as well, if you can find something suitable to wear from the community college's bargain bin." I bit back the urge to slap that smug grin off her face, reminding myself that confrontation would only cause Miles to further retreat into her web of lies. As I left, Cora's parting words cut like a knife. "I'd watch your back if I were you. You never know when something might slip through the cracks." Her vague threats only strengthened my resolve. If Cora thought she could bully me into submission, she was sorely mistaken. This was war, and I wouldn't rest until I reclaimed my brother from her toxic clutches. As the days ticked down to the engagement party, Cora's manipulation tactics intensified. She paid a visit to my parents, batting her long lashes as she spun an elaborate tale about investing in a once-in-a-lifetime business opportunity that required a hefty cash infusion. "It would secure all of our futures," she said, her voice dripping with false sincerity, "but we'll need your financial support to make it happen." My heart sank as I watched my normally sharp-witted parents get ensnared in Cora's deceitful web. Dad nodded enthusiastically, smitten by her charm offensive, while Mom wrung her hands with concern. "I'm not sure we have that kind of money readily available," she fretted. Cora's smile remained plastered on, but her eyes flashed with impatience. "Surely you could liquidate some assets or take out a loan against the family business? Miles and I would pay you back tenfold once this deal goes through." Before they could respond, I burst into the living room, unable to stay silent any longer. "Don't do it. She's lying to you, to all of us." Cora whirled toward me, her expression contorting into a venomous glare. "How dare you barge in here and make such accusations?" "Because it's the truth." I shot back, my voice rising with pent-up frustration. "I know all about your history of scamming wealthy men, Cora. You're nothing but a con artist." For the first time, real panic flickered across her features as she struggled to regain her composure. "She's delusional," Cora sputtered, turning to my stunned parents. "Lena's just bitter and jealous that her own life lacks purpose or direction." My fists clenched at my sides as Mom gaped at us, utterly bewildered. Dad's expression hardened as he considered Cora's deceptively innocent demeanor. "Is this true, Lena?" he asked gruffly. "Because if you're making outlandish claims with no proof, that's a line I won't tolerate." I took a deep, steadying breath. "I have proof. Lots of it." Reaching into my bag, I pulled out the dossier I'd compiled. Bank statements, testimonies from Cora's former flames, even a nugget about a prior arrest for financial fraud that had been expunged. Cora paled as I slammed the stack of papers on the coffee table with a thud. Her green eyes, so adept at feigning warmth, now blazed with undisguised hatred. "You'll regret this," she hissed through gritted teeth. I leveled her with an icy glare. "No, Cora. You're the one who's going to regret ever messing with my family." With that vow lingering in the tense silence, I turned on my heel and stormed out, my mind already formulating a plan to put a stop to Cora's twisted games once and for all. In the aftermath of my confrontation with Cora, I wasted no time coordinating my next move. I knew her vindictive nature meant she would likely retaliate, so I had to strike first and decisively. I gathered a small group of trusted relatives, my Uncle Jack, Cousin Emma, and Miles's childhood best friend, Alex. After swearing them to secrecy, I laid out the incriminating evidence I'd compiled on Cora. "This woman is out to bleed our family dry," I declared, sliding copies of the dossier across the table. We need to expose her lies at the engagement party before she has a chance to make her next play. Uncle Jack stroked his graying beard, eyes narrowed in contemplation. I always had a bad feeling about that one. Count me in. Emma and Alex exchanged a loaded glance before nodding in solemn agreement. With my covert team assembled, we began mapping out an airtight plan of attack. Meanwhile, Cora continued flaunting her false persona, leveraging Miles's family connections to further her own agenda. I cringed as she sidled up to unsuspecting relatives at a lunch gathering, batting her lashes and spinning grandiose tales about her supposed business ventures. We're diversifying into high-end real estate development, she gushed, clinging to Miles' arm with an adoring smile. It's such an exciting opportunity. Miles beamed, utterly enthralled, as the others offered congratulations and well wishes. Only my dad regarded Cora with a measure of skepticism after my damning revelations. As the party drew nearer, tensions mounted. Cora caught me leaving the house one afternoon, her eyes glittering with unveiled malice. I know what you're up to, she hissed, strutting toward me with fists clenched. You and your pathetic little crew can try to take me down, but I'll bury you all. I refused to flinch, squaring my shoulders as I met her venomous glare. I'm not afraid of you, Cora. It's over. A cruel smile curved her painted lips. We'll see about that. The night before the party, my phone pinged with an ominous text from an unknown number. Give it up, or you'll lose everything. Attached was a photo of the community college where I taught, the implication clear. I shuddered, but my resolve didn't waver. Cora had upped the stakes, but she had no idea what I was capable of to protect my family. Tomorrow would be her ultimate reckoning. The Grand Pavilion ballroom glistened with opulence, the crystal chandeliers casting a warm glow over the lavish floral arrangements and white linen tables. But beneath the glamorous facade, an undercurrent of tension rippled through the air. Cora swept into the venue on Miles's arm, resplendent in a slinky emerald gown that left little to the imagination. Her smug smile faltered infinitesimally when she spotted our covert team stationed at strategic points around the room. Tonight will be a night to remember, she purred into Miles's ear, tightening her grip on his bicep. Just wait until you hear the announcement I have planned. As guests mingled and fawned over the extravagant affair, I caught Emma's eye and gave an imperceptible nod. It was time to spring our trap. The first subtle strike came as Uncle Jack engaged Cora in conversation, steering her toward a quiet corner with a few polite compliments. Your dress is exquisite, he remarked, his grandfatherly demeanor utterly disarming. It must have cost a small fortune, just like this entire party, I'd wager. Cora preened under the faux praise. Why, thank you, Jack. Miles and I spare no expense when it comes to the finer things. Of course, of course. Although I must admit, I was surprised when Lena told me about your unconventional business dealings. He hissed softly, watching her face contort with the first flicker of unease. Fraud, extortion, swindling wealthy bachelors out of their fortunes. It's all a bit unsavory, wouldn't you agree? Cora's mouth dropped open, but before she could respond, Emma sidled up with a conspiratorial grin. Oh, Aunt Cora, you simply must meet my friend Claire, she chirped, gesturing toward the sour-faced woman at her side. She's dying to share her experience dating you a few years back. As Claire launched into a diatribe about the thousands Cora had conned out of her, I watched the blood drain from cunning schemer's face. Nearby, Alex began questioning Miles about the astronomical party costs, while casually mentioning his concerns over Cora's misuse of funds. Within minutes, a hush fell over the ballroom as Cora's panicked gaze flickered between the damning witnesses closing in from every angle. Miles, honey, you have to believe me, she began, her voice wavering. But it was my turn to strike the final blow. I stepped forward, folders of irrefutable proof clutched in my hands. Everyone, I'm afraid there's been a terrible mistake, I announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. This party is a sham. A ruse intended to distract us all from the truth about Cora's despicable intentions. Gasps rippled through the crowd as Cora paled, frozen in the spotlight of scrutiny. I have evidence, I declared, fanning out the incriminating documents with a flourish. Bank statements, legal records, testimonials, all laying out Cora's long history of defrauding and manipulating people for her own nefarious gain. Our relatives rallied behind me, bolstering my words with a chorus of condemnation aimed at the now exposed charlatan. Cora's mouth opened and closed like a gasping fish, her facade of confidence utterly shattered. In that moment, it was evident that her reign of terror had finally, deservedly, come to an ignominious end. As the weight of the evidence crushed down on her, Cora's composure rapidly unraveled. Her perfectly coiffed demeanor disintegrated into a frantic, wide-eyed panic. "Miles, darling, you can't possibly believe these ridiculous lies," she cried, grasping his arm with claw-like desperation. "It's all a big misunderstanding." But the hurt and betrayal etched on Miles's face spoke volumes. Slowly, reluctantly, the veil of infatuation lifted, as he absorbed the damning testimonies and paper trail detailing Cora's web of deceit. "How could you?" he rasped, anguish lacing his words as he wrenched free of her grip. "You used me, my family, for your own selfish gain?" Cora opened her mouth, but no coherent defense emerged, only a strangled whimper as the stark reality crashed down upon her. She was finished, exposed for the callous con artist she truly was. As the stunned silence stretched on, Dad stepped forward, his expression grave. "I think it's time you left, Miss Jennings, and I'd advise against any further contact with my family." The use of her full name seemed to jolt Cora from her stupor. With a last desperate pivot, she swept a hand through her perfectly coiffed tresses and attempted a tremulous pout. "Please, I never meant for things to go this far," she simpered, sickly sweet. "I fell so deeply in love with Miles that I lost my way for a bit, but I'm willing to make amends, do anything to prove my devotion." Miles recoiled as if struck, his jaw tightening with righteous indignation. "Save it. I don't want to hear another word from you." His cold dismissal seemed to finally pierce Cora's delusional armor. Her attempts at manipulation collapsed entirely as bitter fury contorted her delicate features into an ugly sneer. "You'll regret this," she spat in my direction, green eyes blazing with visceral hatred. "All of you." But her vitriolic threats rang hollow against the wall of familial solidarity that had rallied against her depravity. We stood united, an impenetrable front that her malice could never breach. With a last contemptuous glare, Cora gathered the tattered shreds of her dignity and stormed out, the click of her designer heels fading into blessed silence. Gradually, the tension in the room dissipated as the truth of Cora's treachery sank in. Miles remained still as a statue, absorbing the emotional fallout, until Mom enveloped him in a comforting embrace. "It's going to be all right, sweetie," she murmured, stroking his hair with maternal tenderness. "We're here for you." Tears glistened in his eyes as he clung to her, finally allowing the anguish to flood forth. But even in his heartbreak, a glimmer of hope shone through. The knowledge that he had us, his stalwart family, to help guide him through the wreckage. As I watched my brother's agonizing journey towards healing begin, I felt a profound sense of relief. The nightmare was over, and justice had prevailed through the strength of our unbreakable bonds. 6 months later, the dark cloud of Cora's duplicity had fully lifted from our family. The business was thriving once again under Miles and my joint leadership, and the strained bonds that her twisted schemes had frayed were healing steadily. I smiled as I watched Miles pore over financial reports at his desk, a crease of concentration furrowing his brow. Gone was the love-struck naivete that had blinded him to Cora's true nature. In its place was a wiser, more grounded man who had learned the value of vigilance the hard way. "Lena, can you come take a look at these projections for next quarter?" he called out, glancing up with a warm smile. "I want to make sure I'm not missing anything." As I rounded the desk to stand at his side, I couldn't help but feel a swell of pride at how far he'd come. In the aftermath of Cora's exposure, Miles had thrown himself wholeheartedly into restoring the family business, determined to atone for the mistakes and vulnerabilities that had nearly spelled our ruin. "Everything looks solid to me," I assured him, scanning the spreadsheet with a practiced eye. "Though I think we could afford to be a bit more aggressive with the marketing budget for that new product line." Miles nodded thoughtfully, jotting down a note. "You're probably right. I trust your instincts." The easy camaraderie and mutual respect between us was a far cry from the strained tensions of months past. Cora's deception had shaken Miles to his core, but rather than retreat inward, he had emerged more committed than ever to upholding the values of honesty and integrity that were the bedrock of our family legacy. Over dinner that evening, conversation flowed as freely as the wine, our raucous laughter filling the air in a way it hadn't for far too long. "Remember when Cora tried to pass off that ratty old fur as a vintage Revlon?" Emma cackled, nearly spilling her drink as she dissolved into a fresh gale of mirth. An impish grin tugged at Miles' lips as he shook his head ruefully. "God, I can't believe how thoroughly she had me fooled. I'm just grateful you all saw through her act before it was too late." Mom reached across the table to give his hand a tender squeeze. "What matters is that you opened your eyes in the end, honey. We're just glad to have you back." As the night wound down and our boisterous clan gradually dispersed, I found myself alone on the back patio, gazing up at the twinkling canopy of stars. So much had changed, and yet in many ways we had emerged stronger, a family united by the indestructible bonds of loyalty and truth. In that tranquil moment, I felt a profound sense of gratitude and resolution wash over me. We had weathered Cora's storm of malice and emerged battle-tested but whole. And though the scars might never fully fade, our perseverance and love for one another would forever be the blazing beacon to guide us through any darkness that dared encroach on our lives again.